Future Summit. We had a pretty full day so far, and I'm super excited to welcome you back. Let's see what today brought. We started off in the morning. We talked about sustainability and foresight. We moved to London, where we talked to Linda Zelina from the International Sustainable Finance Center about sustainable investment. We had a wonderful and I'd say important conversation on genomic revolutions. We now go to Athens and I presume Bucharest to talk about a tech for the blind and assistive technologies. And from 6:30 and 7:30, we switch to Romanian and we talk about sustainable business making and sustainable finance. But I don't want to end this intro here. I just want to tell you what happens tomorrow. You can also see one of the participants in today's calls pitching for the Future Makers incubator from 2 o'clock. But in the morning, there's also what we think really interesting topics from sustainability to innovation and from foresight in business to how do we increase what's called risk education. I want to say hello to our friends who will see this recorded, especially those that live in Latin America, Canada, and the strong contingent that we have from Southeast Asia these days. Now, coming back to who we have in the room, we have two, I'm not sure how to call you, innovators, inventors, or business people. So I would actually start by asking you if you were to pick one of these three categories, inventor, innovator, or business person, in which category you are, and then briefly tell us a bit about what you do. It's super exciting what you do. So I would actually go to Cornel, if you want to give it a go. So who are you, Cornel?
Sure, thank you. Thank you for the introductions and thank you for the invitation, first of all. Choosing one word, difficult. I wouldn't say business person, but I would say entrepreneur. I'm not sure if they're synonyms, but most probably. So I would choose that, but not an entrepreneur by choice, but an entrepreneur by need. Because in order to create the things which we're creating, and in order to design the product which will help millions, it can only work as a business. You can't do it in anything else. So entrepreneurship was the tool which we used in order to do what we do. Otherwise, so trust me, I wouldn't be an entrepreneur. I just would choose any other path but this one. Regarding what we do, I'm the founder, the co-founder and the CEO of Lumen. At Lumen, we build glasses that empower the blind to live a better life. More specifically, you have 40 million blind people now, increasing to 100 million by 2050. And if you look at the solutions which they have, you have a few. But when it comes specifically to mobility, you only have two. And those are the white cane and the guide dog. And now the guide dog, even if it's by its features unanimously well seen, it's not a scalable solution. In the entire world, there are only 28,000 guide dogs to 40 million blind people. And that's where we come in. That's the shortest I can tell you what we do.
We're gonna go into more details because what you do, it seems like it's super easy. It's like, duh, why nobody thought about this? It's to some extent a very basic idea, but highly complex in the middle. Let's say. Let's go to Dimitris. So how do you see yourself as an innovator, inventor, or entrepreneur? And just what is SwimMe and what is that? What do you do?
Okay. Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation and to say that it is an honor for me to be here representing SwimMe in this summit. Now, the question that you pose is a very interesting one. I'd like to say that I see maybe myself as an innovator, but not only the technological sense, because entrepreneurship in itself contains innovation. And I think innovation is almost mandatory in order to be an entrepreneur, because you constantly have to try new things and see how that works, and then work on what doesn't work. So this is the core value of innovation. And also our technology in itself is something that is not very prevalent in the market. So, yeah. Okay.
And yeah, and what do you do exactly? I mean,
Yes.
I know what you do, but
Okay, I will explain the whole situation so everybody has an overview. So, first of all, the situation in blind swimming is that people with visual impairments that have taken up swimming are facing two major problems. First, they need to know where the wall is so they do not collide with the wall. And the main solution to that problem is the so-called tappers. Basically, they have somebody tap the swimmer with a DIY stick, literal stick with a ball.
wow.
And this, yeah, and the second major problem is losing track of the lane, so straying off the straight line. And there is currently no solution to this problem. So what we are currently making is an IoT wearable that feels exactly like the already existing cap and goggles. And it's in our plans that the materials are recyclable too. But more on the device, it works by giving vibrations in the head of the swimmer about turning left or right and about approaching the wall. And while doing that, there is also an analytics system that is going to provide user data to a mobile app.
Okay,
It
and do you
is,
also measure things like speed and I don't know?
yes. At this point, we're intending on measuring speed, basically, because one of the other, side problems, let's say, that blind swimmers face is that they do not know the time when they finish the race. So this is also very important, and maybe with the speed and measuring time, we can alert them of that also.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I would actually, go to Cornel now and ask him, how exactly, or is it similar to what they do in SwimMe? What you do? Is it the same principle of vibration related to distance, or is it somehow else designed?
Well, not really. It's first of all, it's very interesting. The more and more young people are taking the challenge of helping people with visual impairment. In general, people with disabilities. Myself, I was born in a family where both of my parents have disabilities, and my sister has disabilities. So it's definitely much more exciting to see young people working on anything regarding solutions for disabilities. So for that, I really congratulate you, Dimitris. Regarding what we do, I have to give you an analogy. So if you have, let's look at the guide dog. If you have a guide dog and you ask the guide dog to take you to the chair or take you to the door or to the stairs or take you back home, if they really, really know the route, they will do this by pulling your hand. This is how a guide dog works. It just pulls your hand, avoids you from obstacles, keeps you safe, etc. And it has some limitations, a lot of limitations, by the way. The lumen system does the same. You can ask it exactly the same things you can ask a guide dog, and it will do the same and even more. But rather than pulling your hand, we have this patented feedback mechanism, which we already proven with over 200 blind people, which basically guides you by guiding your head. So, the easiest way to give an analogy is, if you hold your forehead and you slightly pull it sideways or to the direction which you have to go, that's how it feels. But it's immensely precise and immensely intuitive. For example, out of the 200 plus people testing it, we have on average a learning curve of under 5 minutes until a blind person is capable of walking through an open door without touching the sides, without knowing that the door is there. In the absolute worst case, we had it took 17 minutes for a person which also had locomotive disabilities, not only visual disabilities. And that was the worst outlier in our tests. Incredibly intuitive. I would bet more intuitive than pulling your hand. And thinking for a bit on this, it took us, we are training guide dogs professionally for 100 years, but guide dogs have been existing for earlier records 5,000 years ago. And it took us 100 years of professional training in order to get to 28,000 guide dogs worldwide. Now, we done the same in roughly under a year in terms of performance and already surpassing it most probably. And it's absolutely amazing because technology now changes a paradigm which is thousands of years old. And to be on top of this and to be part of this is absolutely a blessing. But yes, this is roughly what we do.
Yeah.
Not really similar, but yeah.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question on that. Why now? I mean, why wasn't something like this, like what you do, developed 20 years ago? Is it about
Sure.
technology or something else?
Sure. You said one thing a bit earlier. You said that this idea is so obvious. Why didn't others try? we are aware of 400 different organizations which tried to do what we do. 400 different research projects from companies which you see every day, tried and failed. Reasons are the following, and a couple of them. One is technologically at the absolute limit to do something like this. Basically what we do, we took autonomous driving technology. Most of the team is coming from automotive. We took autonomous driving technology and we scaled it down to something which you can wear. But if you think of an autonomous driving car, and you don't really think of many because there aren't really that many, and you think of them, you think of tens of kilograms for sensors, tens of kilograms for batteries and everything, and for computers. We only have a few hundred grams, and we have to do arguably more complex things than autonomous driving car, because on the road and everything, the environment is kind of controlled. I mean, well, everyone who ever tried to drive in Eastern Europe would differ, but the environment is kind of controlled. You know, you have the street, you have markings if you have them, you have the signs which are roughly standardized. But on the pedestrian side, you know, on the sidewalk, indoors, outdoors, you don't have those rules, and everything goes. So in a more complex environment, we have to guide humans, which is not necessarily the easiest things to guide, using less power, less weight, and simpler sensory technology. So the challenge is immense, absolutely immense, and it was not possible 5 years ago. And I am aware of kind of a lot of companies who have tried it, and it was not possible. It was not possible to build a product which is scalable. It was not possible to build something which would work. It's barely possible now. And we already spent millions, and we're going to spend more millions until it's finished, but it's that will come very, very soon, and barely possible at this point. That's the reality.
Yeah.
But there's maybe just a second thing. Motivation. This is the second part. We have, you know, a lot of people ask me, it's such a cool idea. No, it is not a cool idea. It's not a good idea. We had 1,000 ideas in Lumen, 990 of them were rubbish. But we have this great process of working with the blind, in which we identify which are those ones which really help. We really understand the problem. We continue understanding the problems. We do a lot of surveys, a lot of interviews, a lot of focus groups, a lot of everything to better understand the challenges that they face, so we can actually offer a solution which helps. That's our only point in Lumen, to help.
Yeah, I think this is valid to most entrepreneurs, and it's not really valid to all innovators or inventors, where conversation loops and feedback loops with let's call them clients or beneficiaries is often not that present. I would go to Dimitrios now and ask him, have you tested so far, or what you have is testable, let's say, and if you had any feedback so far, and what's your take on what Cornel is doing, for example?
Yeah, well, I would like to state that at this point we are in a prototype stage for outside the water, and we are on track to live testing the product in the beginning of 2022. Now, it's not a technology that existed before, so we ourselves are like trying to build from the base up. So we are kind of testing first principles at this point. For example, it is very difficult, of course, to take something that works outside the water and to put it inside. So at this point, we have done some testing, depending of if the technology alone works in the water. And we have gained some positive results from that. But of course, it's another thing to test with real clients, that's for sure. And that's very amazing what the Cornell team is doing. Because I believe, of course, that customer feedback is number one priority. So congratulations to that, guys. And what was the second stage of your question?
No, so I was wondering if you worked with blind people, or what's the process there?
Okay, yeah. So what we've done is communicated with blind Paralympic athletes. And that's how we began adjusting our product. And also with blind impaired, not only visually impaired, not only completely blind, because even the visually impaired have actually problems in the pool, because even a little light can disorient them. And that's why they even use blacked out goggles. So at this point, we're talking with blind associations. we're doing some questionnaires, getting some qualitative feedback just on one-to-one basis, one-to-one calls with blind athletes, and that's how we move on at this point.
I know that Cornel was saying in one video that there's roughly 40 million visually impaired people. There's data that says it's about 130 million. So it depends also on the, of course, on the gravity or the seriousness of the problem. I wanted to go to Cornel and ask him. I mean, I presume, and he presumes, of course, that Lumen is going to be successful and change lives for many. But how many can you do? Because looking at least Romania, but other countries as well, usually blind people or people with severe disabilities are to some extent those that have little to, well, not that much, an economic status that would allow them to buy something that looks really nice, but might be really expensive. So how can you reach more in a market
Definitely.
where,
Well, it becomes very interesting because our innovation is not only in the product, which is, you can imagine, we have 40 people working on this thing by now, and it's absolutely amazing the things we can do. We're actually going to publish a few things. The 3rd of December is coming, the International Day of People with Disability, and we're going to publish some nice things by then, or on that day. So still stay tuned. Okay, let me answer your business question. I believe in doing things for good. I don't believe in doing things for good which are not sustainable. And because it makes no sense. There's no way in this world that you could get millions and millions to develop something like this and then actually spread it and it cost you billions to make 40 million people, or at least a few million people use it. It will going to cost you billions. So let me answer that one. We do not want the blind to pay. We are not going to be a B2C company. We are not selling directly to our end users. What we're doing is the following. All over the world, there are programs which can heavily subsidize the price of such devices. Let's give Romania, for example, and most EU countries have roughly the same system. In Romania, there are programs in which a person with disabilities can get up to 5,000 euros in order to buy an assistive technology. I'm hearing a very strange sound. Do you hear it as well? I'm hearing a strange sound. I'll try to concentrate without hearing it. Okay. Getting back. There are programs which heavily subsidize this. In Romania, you can get up to 5,000 euros per device. In other countries, you get more. And these programs you can actually find worldwide in most countries on a particular development index. We have actually researched over 100 countries. We have actually begun ranking them in terms of not only the prevalence of blindness, how many people are blind in that particular country, but also their income, their insurance level, their education, their employment, and their access to funds. And it's very interesting how the top 10, top 20 looks. And of course, as a business, we're going to focus entering on those markets first. Romania is part of those. So to get back to your question, the blind will not pay for this. The blind will need it, and we're working with partners worldwide. We are growing our list of, we're growing our international partner network, which is going to deal with marketing, sales, maintenance, and training for what we do. And already it's kind of growing. It's already on multiple continents, and hopefully by the end of next year, we're gonna pass 500 partners in that list.
You estimate that you would produce and sell, whatever sell might mean, around how many devices?
We have a 3-generation plan already. We have 3 generations planned in the following years. The first generation, which is at the limit of what technology can do today, absolute limit, is going to be the generation which we produce up to 200,000 units. Then we go to the second generation, which goes up to 1 million units. And then the global product will actually come in the 3rd generation, which will look at 5 million units. This is our plan at this point. And this is because we're target, it's a normal market entry point when it comes to technologies which are disruptive. First, you need a high price, low volume. 200,000 is low volume, by the way. If you ask a manufacturer, 200,000 is nothing. If you ask us, 200,000, it's a lot of lumen devices. But then that's the, we are developing a product which can be used in most situations. We are tackling 3 main things. We believe that our product, and basically we believe that what we do will enhance social life, employment, and education. And in all three of them, we are looking at use cases, and we are working on use cases. Specifically, one of them you're going to find by the 3rd of December. And we're now working to make it work underwater, so no problem with that. But it's waterproof, so let's test it actually one day. Let's see. Maybe in a couple of months we can actually test it in a pool.
You said at one point that you're happy that young people are starting to look into this huge market of solutions for people with disabilities or special abilities, and there is a highly untapped market, much like other markets, like unbankable people, etc. So one of the reasons that we called you both here is not just to get inspired from one another, but also to ask you something which is not about the blind or the visually impaired, but about people with disabilities or special abilities, which is how do you see technology, or how can we accelerate the tech solutions in creating solutions for people with various types of disabilities, physical, mental, and that's about it to some extent. So I wouldn't say there's a magic recipe, but you might have hit, both of you, at different levels of maturity. You might have hit something that more people would say, let's do it.
Who wants to go first?
I was thinking about making the whole assistive system more environmental, rather than focusing on specific people. Of course, I don't know how feasible this is, but and I don't know if you were thinking kind of the same. But for example, in swimming, it is a way to do something that is close to what we're doing, is actually putting cameras maybe in the whole swimming pool, or maybe using some other system that controls the whole environment, not just putting all the pressure on the person itself or the coach, for example. So maybe this is an advancement that you could also see outside the water. I don't know.
Okay, I think I understand what you say is what you say in particular for blind, but maybe not just for blind, to also change the environment around us and the context, not just what you have as a person. So the most basic example is a street signs for blind people, on the pavement. That would sort of help those that don't have a lumen headset or glasses, for example, etc. Cornel, this is sort of one of sort of towards the end of the conversation. Is there, or do you see at the European or global level, a movement to get more tech into assistive technology for people with disability? Are you an exception in the innovators and entrepreneurial market?
It's, first of all, I grew up in a family only knowing people with disability, and for me this was life. This is how I grew up, with people with disability doing things which probably in the normal context or in the normal belief wouldn't be things which would possibly, you would think further would be possible. And that definitely inspired me to build the things which I build. And to answer your question, I think that only now there are a few, very few examples, we are one of them, which will start a trend. Now, technology goes in trends. That's the reality. We have trends and trends and trends. Years ago it was one thing, last year's was blockchain. And one of the trends which is coming now, it's ESG, of which we are part. And I believe this is at the absolute beginning of this ESG trend. Hopefully the metaverse trend will not really surpass this one, but most probably will. But still, I truly believe that this is the perfect moment for ESG to be the trend which will guide investors to invest in things like this, general market perception to be that this is the thing which we should do. Unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, we're one of the starters of this movement. And with time, I believe that it was just gonna build on it and on it. Simply said, in 2 years from now, I'm 100% sure that it will be 10 times easier than it was for us when we started. And that's a great thing, because there's only good things to come from this. More technology, which will assist people with disability, so they will enhance their education, employment, and social life.
Of course, since we talk about technology, something popped into my laptop and it didn't work. Can you hear me, guys?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, sorry.
We had an answer. The answer was okay, hopefully.
Yeah.
So next question.
What I got is that you're one of the first, to some extent, in the market, and obviously Dimitrios is for sure one of the first. One last question is about visually impaired or becoming blind. I used to work to some extent with this issue, and I remember a conversation with somebody saying, "Yeah, but the blind people, the blind people." But becoming blind can be anybody's future reality for various reasons. So, to some extent, what you are developing is not a solution for blind people, but you're developing a solution that could be used for any or anyone, because the risk to actually become blind might be small, but it's very real. So in the same time, I wanted to ask you, what other types of industries to some extent or causes could benefit from what you do? Because if I were to make a comparison, radar was not invented or was a purely military application, and then it transformed into a variety of other types of industries. Is there a spillover effect that you feel, Cornel, in what you do, and in what type of industry or area or domain?
I will not go into a lot of details because it's still in our IP, but I'll give you a couple of hints. Quickly answering your question, yes. What we developed, taking technology from autonomous driving, scaling it down to something which you can wear, we had to push technology more than it was pushed until now. And because of this, we have invented quite a lot of things which can be reused. And we do see a lot of reusability in what we do. We see reusability in any kind of non-visual feedback for people, regardless if they have disabilities or not. Military, medical, there are a lot of applications for what we did. We have 4 core focus areas. Now, I will not describe them because they are very proprietary to us, but the re-applications are incredible. We will stay in the area of disabilities because that's where we think we can have the biggest impact. However, we are considering to have a spin-off in the following, I would say, year in another direction. Again, we had to develop a lot of technology to do what we do, and the technology which we develop can be used in other projects, other directions as well. So it's still a business. We still have to think of business cases, and that's one of the directions. Just
Cool.
as just to give an example, SpaceX with Starlink. Starlink was enabled by SpaceX, but it's a completely different service. But it's going to fuel them for quite a while in terms of cash flow.
Yeah. I can only imagine how the advertising industry would look at what you do, and I'm positive they would be very interested. Also, other types of industries for what Dimitris is doing, in particular, related to sports. Now, thank you so much. It was lovely to hear and talk to you. I just want to take this opportunity to wish Dimitris a successful day tomorrow. Don't forget, I'm not sure which time you pitch, but together with startups from, I think, 6 countries, we have a couple of thousands, tens of thousands of euro to support you to fail. And whenever I say that this is money to fail, people look at me and say, don't ever say that. Well, not really. I think we need to have the safety of financial resources to fail, because otherwise we might lose the force of creativity and the force of courage. So I wish you good luck. See you tomorrow at the pitches.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And thanks a lot, Cornel, for taking the time. I think it was very useful for more of us to understand not just what technology can do, but what we can do with technology. Because, in the end, technology by itself is quite useless. We need somebody to do something with it. Have a wonderful day, and see you for the rest of us for the next session at 6:30 in Romanian. We talk about sustainable business making with Dragoș Tuță from Ambasada Sustainabilității, Ionuț Georgescu from FEPRA, and Radu Ciocoiu from Raiffeisen Bank. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye.